Good afternoon, and welcome to our daily devotion for this Holy Wednesday, 2020. Today I'm going to continue and share stories that we read of in Matthew's Gospel that took place during Holy Week. And today, we're going to hear about what took place in chapter 22, verses 23 through 33. But first, I want to take a moment and point something out to you all. Today, I wanted to intentionally share my thoughts and feelings about this particular story we're about to hear from this very location at our church home. This is our Memorial Prayer Garden. And as many of us know, each year during Memorial Weekend, we plant flowers here for those within the lives of either our church home or perhaps even the lives of those within our community who have passed. It's a celebrated tradition that we begin worship with each and every Sunday, Memorial Weekend. And I thought, being aware of this meaningful ministry that we share each and every year, it might shed some new insight toward the words we're about to hear from Matthew 22. So without further ado, let me share verses 23 through 33. Hear these words. Some Sadducees came to him, saying, "There's no resurrection." So they asked him, meaning Christ, a question, saying, "Teacher, Moses said if a man dies childless, his brother shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died childless, leaving the widow to his brother. Second did the same, as also the third, down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman herself died. In the resurrection then, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For all of them had married her." Jesus answered them, "You are wrong, because you know neither Scripture nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is God, not of the dead, but of the living." And when the crowd heard this, they were astounded at his teaching. I recall the last time I shared a sermon about this story. I recall making some wisecrack about how this text kind of reminds me of that classic musical, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. Though in truth, if you know this musical, there's really nothing similar about this story and that wonderful play. Other than maybe that moment when Millie, one of the main characters, i.e. the first bride, married Adam, the first brother. Initially, she made some comment about how she felt like she was taking care of him and his 6 other brothers, henceforth the mission of getting them all married, 7 brides for 7 brothers. But without giving away too many spoilers about this very fun musical, with it being Holy Week, and with what's going on within our lives right now, I think we need to see how we all personally relate to this story and how we can find meaning as we approach these final days of Holy Week. Because when I read this, I can't help but think of a moment that took place in my career some dozen plus years ago. I was leading a Bible study at a former congregation I was serving in West Virginia, and we were discussing this very same passage. And there was one within this group who was an 80-plus-year-old woman who acted a lot younger than she really was, who during this entire conversation, during this entire study of this particular passage, just smiled. And why? Because it was publicly known that she had been married not once, but twice. And she had been widowed on both occasions. In fact, when she did participate in the conversation, she openly said with a big grin on her face that she plans to be laid to rest between her 2 husbands. Of course, some lighthearted laughter ensued, us being the close-knit Bible-studying family we were at that moment. But then someone asked the million-dollar question, a kind of awkward question, as to who she thought she was going to be married to when this came to be. And she just smiled once again and said, "I'm just going to let God decide." And I think this highlights, this moment I just mentioned to you, this highlights what this week should mean for each and every one of us here and now. It is Holy Wednesday, and I'm sure most of us have had plans and or intentions that perhaps had to be modified and or changed for this coming weekend. I would imagine many of us watching this video right now had plans for Easter Day that obviously had to be changed. But you know, no matter what or how we've had to modify, adapt, or change our plans for this Easter, let's just be faithful and allow God to decide. Allow God to decide to inspire us. Allow God to decide how we can and be enabled to celebrate this Resurrection Sunday together as a family of faith. Because my friends, as our lives continue to beckon, may this peace continue to be held within our arms. Let's continue this week together knowing that we are walking in the light of God and will continue to be embraced by God now and forevermore. Amen.